Hey guys, Saga here, and today I want to talk to you about Hearthstone and Hearthstone RNG and how we arrived at this point that we're at. So first I want to start with this clip from Firebat because this is the clip that kind of motivated this video. Alright, check it out.
There's plenty of RNG already that can decide games. Well, that argument's retarded, in my opinion. And the reason why I think that argument's unacceptable, and I'm really sad that that's most people's main argument, is they're like, there's already plenty of RNG that decides games. Who cares if there's more? Me. Why does there need to be more? There's a limit of where RNG is fun, right? So you have the spectrum of RNG, and you're like, yeah, well, you need a little RNG so the game's not stale. I agree with Blizzard on that point. I think that's fantastic. Have a little RNG so the game doesn't get stale. And then there's a point where you have too much RNG, just saying RNG is fun, let's keep adding more RNG. Well, RNG is not always fun. There's a limit for it. There can be too much where it starts becoming too much of an affecting the scale of play. So my meter for RNG is when it becomes statistically unlikely for the best player in the world based on win rates to qualify to prelims, given if they've played all 3 available tries to them. That's when I think the RNG is too much, and that's where we're at right now. It hurts the drive to be a competitor a little bit.
Now I thought this was a pretty interesting notion in that Hearthstone has hit this threshold where there is too much RNG in it. And as somebody who's played Hearthstone since beta, I had to ask myself, is that true? Is there too much RNG right now? And as I went to solve that question, I realized that it's actually more complex than it seems. I know when you hear RNG out of the majority of people's mouths, they mean it in a very, very negative connotation. The only time you ever hear RNG is when it, like, works against you.
The amount of butthurt that you guys are about to witness from Sylvanas RNG. Here's the 50-50. Lost. Here's the 50. Here's the. Yep. I told you. I fucking saw this coming. Reynad, why do you complain about bad luck so much? Reynad, it's not fun to hear you complain. Get in a better mood. Well, let me tell you. Every time you've ever played Hearthstone, remember those couple times that you got really lucky off that top deck? Somewhere across the world at that same point in time, there was Reynad getting shit on by some card with the word random on it. I am the yang to everyone else's yin.
And where RNG is most heard as a derogatory term, that's just not fair to RNG. RNG is a lot of the reason that Hearthstone is so interesting to play. It's also a lot of the reason that you want to play a card game. I mean, card games inherently have RNG. Card games have RNG because you have to draw cards, and cards are a random event. I mean, you don't know what they are until they're flipped over, and when you look at them, you can either be caught with a fairly average hand, or you could have the game-winning hand. Everyone's had a game of Hearthstone where either you or your opponent have a starting hand that looks like this, where it's almost impossible for them to lose, and they just barrel through you, and that's inherent RNG. Now this RNG isn't going anywhere, and it's going to exist as long as we're playing with cards. However, what Hearthstone does is it takes these cards and takes these hands, and what it does is it adds dice. But really, if we want to do this accurately, Hearthstone's more of a game with dice and coins. Cards are played. So let's take Reynad's favorite example of Knife Juggler and look at this. This card is a Knife Juggler, so every time you play a minion, you add anything else to your board, it gets to flip a coin. And when it does so, if it lands on heads, it throws a knife. If it lands on tails, it doesn't. So that time it landed on tails. And you get to keep your minion. Now this minion gets to trade with this minion, and then you play a minion of your own, and the game goes on. In that same scenario, Knife Juggler plays a card, a coin is flipped, and it lands on heads. A knife hits this card dies, no longer able to trade with this one, and now all of a sudden you've started this terrible snowball effect that ends in you losing the game. So imagine this is a tempo mage, and this is anything that's winning really badly. Tempo Mages burn through their entire hand, you've survived their onslaught, you're going into the late game, but your last card is the only card you need, the Ace of Spades, which of course represents Yogg-Saron. Now, this is an unwinnable position no matter what card this is. Almost always. Even if this is Deathwing, maybe he has something left in his hand that can deal with it, or could top deck something. However, when Yogg-Saron is played, the RNG looks something a little bit more like this. Now, that could be a variety of favorable outcomes. It could be unfavorable and you could kill yourself, but most of the time, because of the way spells work and how you can't always target yourself, and how some damage spells can only hit enemy things or board things can only hit the board, it usually gives you a favorable outcome. So people play Yogg-Saron knowing that in this situation there's no other way that you can win. But the problem is it's so good that people are able to rely on it to do this. So if you play enough spells, you know something's going to get cleared. And a lot of the times, the outcomes of Yogg-Saron look something like this. This board gets wiped one way or another. Your Yogg-Saron probably dies. But maybe, while all this is happening, something else is resummoned. Doesn't matter what it is. The point is, you've completely 180'd the game position. Oh, and while this is happening, of course, you are gleefully drawing cards, because card effects, card draw effects, almost always just target you. So now you have a full hand of cards, he has 2 cards left in a destroyed board, while he's facing a board that he has to deal with. And all of a sudden, you're able to win a game that you had no business winning. Now, the worst thing about Yogg-Saron is that it feels like rando chess. Like, every single decision you made was a normal chess game decision up to that point. It was all high strategy. You positioned yourself well, you had to win. If you don't know what random chess is, it's a game where you play a real game of chess, and then at the very end of the game, when one person has won the game of chess, you flip a coin. And if the coin lands on heads, the person who won the game wins the game. However, if it lands on tails, then the person who lost the game won the game. So in a way, it undermines all your strategy. Now, while you were actually playing chess, all of that strategy was real. It's all the same game of chess. By the way, I hate chess analogies, on a side note. Whenever somebody wants to say something strategic, they say it's like chess, but like this is rando chess, so I guess I'm okay with this analogy. Maybe. All I'm saying is there's other ways to say things are strategic. Chess. The real problem with Yogg-Saron is that it is so powerful that in some ways, if the draws or if the rolls are good enough, it undermines all of the strategy that led up to that point. Maybe you had to strategize how to survive long enough to play Yogg-Saron, but I think we all know that that's not the kind of strategy. Like, that's not enough of a win condition, get to turn 10. No one's okay with that. The worst thing is, with that, all that said and done, I can't lie, I really like watching Yogg-Saron played, so I understand that perspective of it too. And I know why Blizzard makes cards like this. They want to add a really cool random element. I remember when Yogg-Saron came out, and I didn't grasp what exactly it meant. Like, I made the card, and I made most of my cards this time gold, because I had a ton of dust from everything we could have disenchanted for full price. And Yogg-Saron was the only card I didn't make gold of the ones I made. And the reason I did that is because I didn't know how the effects would play out. Like, I didn't know if this would be good for the game or bad, or if it would be like a funny joke card. Like, I knew decks would play it and I knew I wanted to play around with it, but like, did I really want to spend that extra 1600 dust? Well, it turns out, since it's in practically every deck, I had to go back and make it gold anyway. But it is so powerful and game defining that having a Yogg-Saron in your hand and playing it is often the difference between winning and losing. I mean, think about other really broken cards in the game, or rather, let's say, incredibly strong cards in the game. They don't have such game-defining effects. Like, you could say, sure, N'Zoth is super powerful. You had to play all these death rattles, and then once they die, you bring them back, and oftentimes that will win you the game. But there are situations that summoning death rattles will not save you from, but Yogg-Saron could. So Blizzard, I know why you did it. You added RNG to the game because you wanted hands to not always play out in the same way, to not always play out in the same order. You wanted an element of randomness, because in that randomness, in that seeing cards that are not normally played, or being in a situation that you normally wouldn't be in because a weird card was played or a weird thing happened, that lets you really see who the better player is. I mean, think about how many situations you've seen before that you now know the best answer to. Like, this first couple turns, if before any RNG cards are played or before anything, you know, big and game-changing happens. Most board states, you've probably seen something like it, or you've seen the exact one, and you probably know how to solve that puzzle. But by adding RNG elements to the game, you are able to have puzzles that people haven't seen before or have never seen, you know, card interactions. Like getting other classes' spells, for example, is a great way to do that. Wait, let me be more precise on that. I think it's a great way to do that, but I think it needs to be a little bit more defined in the future. And the reason is, take a card like Swashbuckler. So, when you play that card, you get a random class card from your opponent's class. But the problem is, when you pull from such large subsets, it's really hard to play around things. So like, take Ysera. Ysera, I think, is an RNG card that's really done right. So there's 5 possible outcomes with Ysera. And depending on what your opponent does after they play Ysera, you can kind of guess as to what they've gotten. Like, you might not get it right every time, but you might be, he hasn't played this. He would have played a Ysera Awakens already. He definitely doesn't have that one. Maybe he has this one. Like, that type of intelligent thought where you're thinking about the subset of cards he could have drawn and then thinking about what you should do because of that is an RNG card done right. Like, you've given him a random effect. The game isn't always the same, but you've done it in a way where the opponent has a way that he can sort of read, make educated guesses. Things like that are great. Like, Ysera is a perfect card. However, compare that to Swashbuckler. You can't, like, play around the fear that your opponent has that one ridiculous spell from your opponent's class. Like, you have no way at making any kind of educated guess. And that really detracts from that. I think what you really need to do in future card design is make those subsets smaller, make it from a set of cards. Like, what is the new rogue one? Zeril. Zeril the Poisoner. He has a good subset of cards. You know that there's a variety of different things he could do, you have a general idea of what they do, and you can make guesses as to which one your opponent has. That's great design. But Swashbuckler doesn't feel as good. Like, I understand you're going for the thief archetype, and I like it. I just feel like the subset that it gets stolen from needs to be smaller so that you can actually guess. So I want to end this video on a clip from Kripparrian in his recent Let's Talk About Esports video. Here, check it out.
You can't have what's supposed to be, what they're trying to perceive as a super serious esport, while at the same time having ridiculously RNG cards. You can have one of those, but you can't have both of those. You can't have Yogg-Saron in every other deck and pretend like you have a serious gaming esports scene. You know, if you want to have a serious gaming esports scene, then you can't print cards like Yogg-Saron, or you need to find a way that these cards are not allowed into serious tournaments. However, I would argue that the solution for this is just simpler. You just make it less serious. You know, why does it have to be a big deal? You know, Hearthstone is really, the core of the game is about having a blast, learning something, and experiencing something new. And RNG does not conflict with that. If you make your tournaments less serious, more about having fun and enjoying yourselves, RNG can just be awesome. Except, I guess, for the player in the tournament who's having RNG going drastically against them.
What do you guys think? Should Hearthstone be competitive, or should it be more, as Krip suggests, as a fun game? Also, just personally speaking, I do worry about the health of the game if we don't keep competitive in mind. Like, even if you're a casual player, casual players still want there to be professional players. They want somebody to look at, to compare their play to, and they like, you know, from a viewing standpoint, storylines and things like that. I think he is totally right. I don't know if he says it in this video or in another one, but next expansion is going to be the expansion that really defines Hearthstone. This being my first bit of Hearthstone content, I thought I'd introduce myself. My name is SixthSaga. I'm a vlogger. I make Overwatch content. I travel the world. I do all kinds of stuff. I try to put it up onto YouTube. So if you guys haven't checked out my channel yet, please come check it out. There's a lot of different things on there, and the categories are going to be growing every day. I'm also going to be making some short films, and this particular video is a part of a 3-part series that's going to be coming out about Hearthstone. This is just the first, so if you want to see the rest, please subscribe. By the way, I'm so sick and tired of chess analogies. Like, whenever somebody wants to say, like, if they thought about their words, they would say something like, oh, this is strategic, or has strategic elements in it. But instead of saying that, people say, oh, this is just like chess. And I hear that all the time. Like, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people be like, this is just like chess. Really? I've never broken anyone's arm during chess.